Mental stress, mental trauma, its specificity and mechanism of development of post-stress disorders. Adel Tadevosyan. I dedicate today's lecture to my teacher, academic Andranik Ampartsumovich Mehrabian. It is due to his talents, his knowledge, and tireless scientific work that made the world to acknowledge the existence of Armenian psychiatry. Dr. Mehrabian was a founder of the psychiatric hospital in Yerevan. It featured with architectural beauty, well-chosen interior design, such as comfortable furniture, palm trees, and multiple paintings on the walls. Unfortunately, at the present time, the future of Norg Psychiatric Hospital is hanging by a thread. Mehrabian Andranik, from 1904 to 1986. Soviet psychiatrist, Doctor of Medical Sciences, Professor, corresponding member of the USSR Academy of Medical Sciences. From 1944 to 1982, head of the Department of Psychiatry of the Yerevan State Medical Institute. The time will come, and the Queen of Sciences, psychology, will take its rightful place in the sciences. Olympus, Andranik Mehrabian, 1965. If we travel some years back, when I say some years ago, of course I mean this woman, looking perfectly young. Not only looking. She actually founded a new idea for Armenia, stressology. Of course, it may not be entirely correct to say, but the fact is that some disruptive events, battles, wars, although it is sad and not acceptable from the point of view of humanity, are an imperative to some scientific achievements. Both World War I and World War II significantly changed the science. After the devastating natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, avalanches, volcano eruptions, scientists have developed multiple methods and approaches to the management of patients who survived the cataclysm. For example, the approach to understanding and management of crash syndrome was started in Armenia. The devastated earthquake in Armenia in 1988 was an important, decisive moment for Dr. Tadevosyan to start developing stressology as a science. Recently, Dr. Tadevosyan has presented the problem of the stress as a multifactorial, and it has to be managed by participation of different specialists, such as psychiatrists, psychologists, biologists. Now I will let Adel Semyonovna take the floor, and she will try to present to you her vision of current problems of stressology. And knowing Adel Semyonovna, I'm sure she will do it in her own way. Adel Semyonovna, I've spoken as much as I could. The floor is yours. Now, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Sigmund Freud has been criticized that he was not experimenter. Let's remember Freud's couch, equipment for hysterical women. He was a great experimenter. And what is hysteria? It is a wandering womb. It was called so previously. Now the term is withdrawn from classification. So my experiment began a long time ago when Andranik Ampartsumovich sent me to the Department of Intensive Care Unit to study suicidal patients, people who challenged life. First case I faced was a 38-year-old woman who threw herself from Kiev Bridge. The most astonishing was that there were no injuries, no broken bones. She had nothing. The first thing she told me was, "Now he will understand that I'm capable of everything." Many years later, I understood why she said that. It is that special state of consciousness which hadn't changed during the fall from the bridge. And it is the first to be spoken about, that psychology is stronger than biology. I could bring countless examples. Hundreds of people passed through my office, and each of them was coming with his own problem. Reflections at a Kerosene Lamp, 1991 to 1996, Armenia. I, Adel Tadevosyan, am a particle of Armenia, half-starved, cold, dark, without line and transport, without television, tired. The only thing I'm capable to do now is to analyze and talk and write down the truth and all what I have understood. By overcoming, I revive. Here you can see, you might probably read years 91, 96, years which provided so much material, observing, studying, helping, creating stress center. which was founded by the Order of Academia of USSR a few months after the earthquake, and as a branch of Old Union Center for Mental Health of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR. Wounded healer. There is an outstanding American psychiatrist, Yalom. He is also a psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, and a writer. He wrote great books. In one of his books, you can find very interesting descriptions of people in one or another form of stress, borderline between health and disease. He has a story which is called The Wounded Healer. Stress Center, which was created to support victims of the earthquake, became an establishment where people came with all their psychological problems, not limited only to earthquake, war, but also people with ordinary life psychological problems. The main attraction on Earth is the attraction between man and woman, similar to physical gravity, with one difference: the basis of psychic gravity is the correspondence of souls. The main causes are the relationship between man and woman and interpersonal relations. The most influential stressors have a long-time impact. What were we doing during those years? My colleagues from the Stress Center and I were not only helping, observing what was going on with a person, how he was reacting, how he was recovering. We also had active correspondence with the newspapers. Here you can see different articles we have published. In the left lower corner you can see the beginning of the Stress Center, a small metal cabin. The work continues until now. Quite recently, you cannot so well hear, so I'll read. In the evening, around 11 o'clock, I received an SMS from a person that I didn't know. I got acquainted to him during the past 3-4 months. He is around 38-39, has work, wonderful wife, nice family, 2 kids. Looks ideal from outside. I'm stressing from outside. Very often we judge about people, their situations from outside. But what is really happening inside? Previously, when I just started, it was very difficult for me to speak about stress disorders, because nobody understood anything in that field. They told, what do we need this for? We have psychiatry. What is that stressology for? Why do we need it? I always told that trauma is a psycho-emotional stress. It is written above. Anthropogenic psycho-emotional psychotrauma. Physical stress is visible by its bleeding muscles, broken bones. That's why it arouses a sympathy, and that's why medicine is developing at such rate. Trauma is invisible. It's a silent volcano. And crush syndrome was perfectly expressed by that man by a poem. When I read it at 11 p.m., I was shocked by depth of his comprehension of what is happening with him. It should be read, because the truth is in you. Please listen to it. Cats got inside my soul again. You know this expression, cat scratching on the soul, is very common when person has problems, feels terrible. Scratching me, willing to clean my soul. Might it be wolves, not cats? Tearing out all those desires I want to hide inside. Or should I tell you about it? I'm desperately suffering, struggling with myself. I beg you, have a mercy. Am I like this, with the thoughts? Like Brutus, Salieri? No, Judah. But wolves tearing guts out, desiring to get rid of my second eye. Help, betray, expose. All thoughts tear out of me. Expose and stomp me out, and tell to everyone about us. What yell about? About nothing? And no hope I have, for God's sake. Seeing Maria well, so hard. More hairy wolves. They're like friends for me. They want to help. Although I'm in a pool of blood, I eat myself and treat them too. And howling with them, I feast with them. I howl with sadness, tormented with desires. And cat still reminds of her, and scratch and scratch. This poem is a good example of self-psychoanalysis. It is very rare when someone can demonstrate the time of recourse as needed, its substance splitting and drawing to it. When I, as any other person, am under the influence of negative emotions, bad memories, and have a problem of getting rid of them, what am I doing? I'm trying to visualize people, environment where I would feel better. Self-psychoanalysis. This is the anchor. That's why every person should have an anchor. What is an anchor? It is a memory, place, people where I felt good. And it should be switched immediately, your attention. This is my anchor. It is a first book published in '96, Correction Stressology. First time appeared name stressology. First time in 91 in World Congress of Emergency Psychiatry, I was talking about stressology. There was no such term before. Our science has weighed and measured both the smallest and the extremely large, both macrocosms in space, and just exactly what is strongly connected with our blood and flesh, which is closest to us, human suffering and disasters, science punished with complete disdain, blindly passed by them. In the beginning of previous century, Miller was also a psychiatrist. Later, he became a sociologist. He wrote a book, Psychology of Suffering. He was saying that everything is examined and analyzed except for our flesh and blood. It is suffering. You are students of the Medical Institute and doctors. Your subject is a human being. I have often met, often read lectures, and I have always asked, before studying, you should know the subject of study. And I ask, what is a human being? Less. That's why I defined for myself what is a human being. The first axiom, human being, conscious trinity, biological, psychic, and social, under the dictates of will and fate. The pill of trinity is a general adaptation syndrome, which consists of systems of biological and psychological adaptation. Here is an axiom. Conscious trinity, biological, psychological, and sociological. The pillars are systems of biological and psychological adaptation. I'm also excited. I'm also in stress. It is normal. Brain, its functions and structure localization. Brain research. The human brain consists of 100 billion neurons, is the most complex object in the universe known to us. Nowadays, brain sciences unite neurophysiologists, molecular genetics and embryologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, mathematicians, and specialists in the field of computer science and artificial intelligence. Mind is a part of a body, as you understand, an amazing part of body. Problems of consciousness, psyche, are now actively discussed, especially among physics. Some of them consider that the brain doesn't produce them, but merely is a simple transmitter of a global consciousness. A world-known neurophysiologist, the head of the Institute of the Human Brain of the Russian Academy of Sciences, academician Natalia Bekhtereва, believed that human brain is a living being within our body. I often think of a mind as if it's a separate organism, like being within a being. Mind protects itself not to be totally embraced by the flurry of negative emotions. Bekhtereва, director of the Institute of Human Brain in Moscow, wrote, I often think of a brain as if it's a separate organism, like being within a being. Brain protects itself not to be totally embraced by the flurry of negative emotions. The doctrine of human being by Spinoza should help people find such human nature which is peculiar to all people: psyche, memory, intelligence, consciousness, adaptation, soul. Neither religion, nor philosophy, nor even psychology and neurophysiology give us a more or less complete idea of soul structure. Phenomenon of empty place, and nature doesn't like emptiness. What defines condition of a person? His body, his thinking, or there's something else which defines it? Spinoza, 15th-16th centuries, even then set a goal: to find a human nature which is general for all human beings, and every human being has a soul. During the past 10-15 years, a human factor and soul have been remembered. But if there is no scientific definition for it, it could be even wrong now. As you understand, now is one reality, tomorrow it will be another. But in any case, there is a science. If we don't define soul, this empty space would be filled with different types of interpretations. Only soul experiences both simple and complex emotional feelings. Emotional palette: surprise, pleasure, anxiety, fear, tenderness, disappointment, jealousy, envy, anger, rapture, passion, suffering, despair, ecstasy. Nietzsche wrote, suffering and sweetness. Only soul can feel suffering and sweetness. Only soul is capable of feeling of these emotions, neither intellect, nor conscience, nor behavior, only the soul. What is love, hatred, tenderness, envy? Who hasn't experienced, felt, at least one in his life, tenderness from touch, lightness of a kiss, tickly feeling from a curl on neck, shot of jealousy, arrow of the Cupid through the thou that only body has, cannot explain this condition specific for human being. Anthroposophist Rudolf Steiner, 1916, distinguished 12 body senses: Lower feelings. Feelings of touch, feeling of life, feeling movement, sense of balance. Middle feelings. Smell, taste, vision, feeling of warmth. Higher feelings. Hearing, feeling of word, feeling of thought, and feeling of eye. Through touch, a person directly enters into a relationship with the outside world. And what is a soul? Let's try to define it. I repeat it again. We might be wrong, but here and now we have to define it somehow to move forward. Neither of scientists ask, what are these complex feelings? Only anthroposophy. There is such a school. It is not generally recognized, but only there we can find it. Wholeness, unity of human being and environment. Human being is a complex open system. All systems are complex and contain subsystems that continuously fluctuate. Human being as a system, a creative world with incomplete information and changing values. Psyche doesn't reflect the objective world, and also an opportunity to create a reality subjective world in the process of exchange with the external environment. All open systems live by exchanging information and energy with the outside world, though it's not a random exchange, but rather a self-selection based on the principle of correspondence. Prigozhin. How can we define? Sechenov used to say that human being and environment form a unitary whole and cannot exist without it. Later, Prigozhin defined it as the system. I don't like the system regarding human being. However, for deeper understanding, we say that it's an open system, which constantly exchanges with energy and information. Look at the ball. You all have probably seen as adults and children roll over the water within such balls. You see that membrane. In fact, life on the earth appeared with an apparition of membrane. Mentally, we also can create a membrane. When a mother-in-law or her daughter-in-law comes to me that her life turned into hell, as soon as I wake up and remember that I should meet her or someone, I all get tense. The tension. What should you advise her? It might be ironic for you, but if you will believe in power psyche and few exercises, you easily can isolate yourself from a pleasant person, who in this situation has a negative influence on you. Imagine yourself in a magic spaceship. Tie up the hatch, close the hatch, that's all. And you there, between psychological and physical worlds. You just have to believe in it. As we don't have much time, I'll skip some things. We are not simply reflecting the world, we are building it. We not simply assimilate the information. Neuropathologists, teachers and others in general speak that there is a strong information flow. But in reality it is not like that. We do not see the infrared and ultra-blue outputs. We not hear ultrasounds either, because there are barriers. The same way human beings have barriers. Information flow sweeps through his sense organs and he assimilates only the things that correspond to his interest or values. Colostrum is a thin, about 2 mm irregular plate, which consists of grey matter and is located on the bark of cerebral hemispheres in the depth of white matter. As it turned out, one of the neurons was extremely long. It covers with appendages the entire outer layer of brain and facilitates interaction between its different parts. All this, according to scientists, suggests that colostrum provides a link between different parts of central nervous system and ultimately enables consciousness. My remark, in case of data confirmation, most likely the filter sifting information is found. And this they have found conscious. It's a big neuron, which is allegedly covers all the brain, and meantime it is like a strainer which keeps unnecessary information. Conformity is based on the principle discovered by Freud: pleasure, displeasure. These conditions orient us in the world, our addiction, our interest, motivation, and our targeted activities. Stress is a psychophysical normal reaction to any changes in the environment, in my body, and in my psychic world, in my thoughts. This principle discovered by Sigmund Freud, and I extract only which is pleasant, which is interesting to me, which lead to my pleasure or displeasure. This is the principle of our world creation, of our activity. Recall that at the beginning of the lecture we adopted an axiom concerning the definition of man. Man can save his life through adaptation. It is carried out at the level of the body by a common adaptation syndrome, discovered by Celia. Since today we have the first meeting on this subject and students of different causes are present, let us recall briefly about the OAS, inherent in all animals. The meaning of it is to realize the instinct of self-preservation, this passive adaptation to the requirements of the environment. I have mentioned several times the general adaptation syndrome. Let's have a look. I've told you about this already, this also. Look, stress sphere. This is external, love. This is thought. It sets off reaction of general adaptation, which consists of first phase, is a neural network, causes by electrical effects, lead to alarm and anxiety. Usually it is impossible here to show you how instantly you react to the alarm, but I will try. If you could see yourself, most of you raised your heads, surprisingly stared at me. Someone smiled. Instant reaction, electricity run, and it is a first phase of general adaptation syndrome, alarm phase. But as nothing threatens you, you have calmed down and everything came back to normal. Second is an axis. It is an endocrinal biochemical effect. If the situation is evaluated as dangerous, man prepares to run or fight, and tension appears. The second phase, tension, is the base for all psychosomatic diseases. And the third phase, exhaustion, asthenia. Biological system of adaptation, stressogenesis. The phase of anxiety, bioelectric mechanism. Phase of tension, endocrine and hormonal mechanism. The phase of asthenia, endocrine and hormonal mechanism. The biological basis of psychical adaptation system is an endocrine humoral regulation by stress hormones through blood. Let's pay attention to this slide and remember that in a series of stressors, a new group of them appears. Thoughts, memories, flashes of memories, presentations. And this group becomes predominant and is specific for a person. The region is little studied and is practically unknown to the biological science of stress. System of psychosocial adaptation mechanism of psychological defense. Biological adaptation system. When it is impossible to watch in microscope, we use a metaphor. This is the route which ensures our adaptation. So, biological system of adaptation, which consists of 3 axes, and this system was discovered in last century, and is a stress, cold stress, temperature stress, etc. Became an object of study of the biological science. Borders of biological adaptation are strict. Hormonal axis, that causes the second phase of stress, the phase of stressing, adrenocortical, somatotropic, thyroid. Axis system is not changed, the area of the genetic program. There are 3 phases, and from it grows out a system of psychological adaptation. Unlike it, the psychological adaptation is free, expanding universe of our psychological adaptation. The system of psychological adaptation that has developed and continues to evolve results in the evolution of system of adaptation under the influence of the growth of stressor per person. This system is the most active, continually expanding due to consciousness and will, and provides a transformation of the environment, expanding the universe of our inner world. With its development, man not only adapts, but he actively recognizes and transforms the world around him. This poster was presented in 2015 in Greece. As you already understand, everything presented here was at the World Congress on Biological Psychiatry. You can clearly see the main symbol of it, forget-me-not, and in the center of the ancient Greek goddess of memory, Mnemosyne. This cause is a theme of a whole one lecture. The bottom line is that memory preserves everything. It is the phenomenon of memory that defines the stressfulness of our lives. Through their mechanism, the function of mirror neurons, eidetism, arbitrary memories, and logic of thinking of any person. I call this whole group eco-phenomena. Sense formation and eco-phenomena are specific for human being. The ability to give significance to environmental signals and to react emotionally, suffer, feel, form the basis for communicating the stress condition. Stressor, on which the brain began to react with one of its composite gas, stressor process, either anxiety or tension or exhaustion. What is a psychological trauma? Trauma or anthropogenic psycho-emotional stress is specific only to a human being. It's a specific factor. Getting traumatized is limited by time and space, and during that, everything has a holographic nature. Under the influence of acute trauma, all psychofunctions change. That's why the memory can consider the central psychofunction, which ensures transition from acute stress to chronic traumatization. Eco-stressor, flashback in complete gestalt. Sensor, nightmare dreams. Emotional, phobias, panic attacks. Motor, epileptic seizures. Cognitive, psychosomatic diseases. Polymorphic, conversions. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. In the beginning, I have shown you that events from outside becomes internal content of the conscious. It is not simply settled in the conscious, it's constantly getting out to the consciousness, and this breakthrough of negative events, emotions, experience is called flashbacks, which can be of different types: sensor, in form of nightmares, phobopanic reactions, motor, cognitive, etc. Psychological trauma has certain time and space boundaries. The event is happening here and now. Fixation of traumatic events occurs like a photographic holographic effect. The selectivity of information is practically absent. The gestalt is fixed in our psychic world, which includes all the qualitative features of the real, a complex of sensory, perception, emotional and behavioral patterns. This gestalt, in the next, appears as flashbacks. I show you this to imagine flashback and its mechanism. Aiwazowski was unaware of it. It turned out that he never painted from the real life. He observed, examined, and then projected it like Levitan on the screen, like in cinema. Our brain has that ability. It is called aesthetical image. To draw like this is possible only if you see, scent, touch, feel at this moment variations of colors, paints, movements, etc. Somatic conversions are caused only by action of the first level of the stressor process, an autonomous nervous axis that provides only bioelectric effect, without connection of endocrine axis and hormones. Only recently, about 10 years, it became clear why is that happening, because the mirror neurons were discovered. Why children remembered everything so fast? He doesn't understand, but because of mirror neurons, perception of new things happen due to photographical reflection, but it's only the beginning. The same, please read. General adaptation syndrome sensor reaction has discrete character. It appears, then 3 phases, then it goes down and then cycle repeats again and again. But in case there are echo stressors repeating the event again and again as flashbacks, as a mirror reflection, or I stay alone with my thoughts, my feelings, and the acute stress, even if it doesn't repeat, it criticizes how it manifests itself as the following. Condition of psychic traumatization. Flashes of memory, ability to emphasize importance of everything and to react emotionally, to suffer or worry, chronicizes stressful condition. Content of traumatized consciousness doesn't have space-time boundaries, specific only to human being. This condition is called traumatization, chronic condition, and it has already no limitation in time and space, unlike acute stress. In any place, time or situation, due to his memory, person experiences the same feelings again, and it is peculiar only to the human beings. Psychic stressor, time post-stress disorders. Time is the determining factor in overcoming the consequences and in the development of post-stress disorders. They say time heals. Yes, often it does. But depending on personality, maybe from absence of support, or depending on situation, time doesn't heal. Quite opposite. It is like when we want to make a snowman, we take a small snowball and begin rolling it. It grows and grows and grows. The same is with thoughts and inner feelings. Alone with myself, I start to tense. I pull memories. How it was said, what was said, how they looked. And this snowball keeps growing. And as a result, person gets into a borderline condition, which is called post-traumatic stress disorders. Unlike the organs medicine, sorry to say, as I myself also a doctor, but our medicine is a medicine of organs. We study organs, system, their interconnections, but not an organism opens our door. A human being is visiting us. The body reveals the truth if you have learned the alphabet. Tadevosyan, Muradyan. In stressology, there is the concept of an end organ, the organ which is mainly bombed by stress hormones. Stress diseases, remote consequences of experienced psycho-emotional stress, negative emotional feelings, traumas. Even in that organs medicine, there is no concept of the final organ, because the main is a reflex, back and forth, back and forth. In stressology, we have a term terminal organ. What does it mean? It is an organ on which this person has usually a final stressor reaction. I have a headache. Again, something happened and he grabs his head. Or, my heart hurts. It is not happening now, but previously, students often kept going to the restroom before exams. Problems with the intestine. Another one has a screen reaction. The organ on which person has his own individual final reaction closure is called terminal organ. Imagine that all this reaction is stress hormones. If the first phase, neurophysiological anxiety by impulse runs and gets an answer, the second phase acts through the blood stress hormones. And if during it, his terminal organ is being attacked, that the stress hormones flows toward it. So you should know that if at the beginning it is functional changes and it is normal, tension always leads to functional changes. But every function then turns into organic change. This is the base of change of borderline condition, the adaptation, the stress to somatic disease. And at the end, it cannot be differentiated from biologically caused disease. I'm not saying that physical diseases are caused only by psychological traumas. It was common to say previously that all diseases are caused by nerves. Now we have been enlightened and say all because of stress. We better know and let know to the others. Indeed, there is a table which shows changes during the stress on all levels: organs level, molecular, biochemical, and another table of changes caused by aging. There is no difference. If we used to say previously that when the child is born it starts dying, it's like that in some way. Reaction to the stress is no different from the reaction to aging process. It seems that human being is very complicated creature, but actually his reactions are very limited. No other option. This is the tense reaction, second phase. I'm not sure if the students present here studied physiology already or not. There are three hormonal axes: HPA, HPG and HPT axis. And depending on time, they act each on its turn. And when you see that concept, what is a human being, how is he functioning, what kind of axis, you don't have to predict risks of this or that kind of disease. An increase in the cortical layer of adrenal glands with a decrease in lipids and cholesterol in them. Involution of the thymic lymphatic apparatus, lymphopenia, eosinopenia, polymorphonuclear leukocytosis. An increase in the level of free conjugated forms of catecholamines, an increase in the concentration of adrenaline, cortisol, their metabolites in blood, a high daily excretion of substances with urine. Increase in the body content of all catabolic pool molecules of free and conjugated forms of catecholamines. The rate of their accumulation exceeds the increase in the level of unbound molecules. Circulating catecholamines are quickly transferred to an inactive population of related forms, threatening the intensity of the processes of lipid peroxidation in the biological membranes of the body. This is a tense reaction. I will skip this. I will stop here. Although I have told you that biological system of adaptation, that is general adaptation syndrome, is a strict process genetically defined by nature, it is not actually true. This process, as well as general adaptation syndrome, also was affected by evolution. If previously there were three stages: alarm, tension, asthenia, interconnected, each followed by another first, second, third, rest and the same process again. Under the influence of tension during the stress caused fission of these phases. Currently, modern human being can be in tension phase without previous alarm phase. That is, each phase became autonomous. That's why now we very often speak about chronic fatigue syndrome or about depressions. It is only an autonomous third phase of general adaptation syndrome, autonomy of its function. I'll say that psychosomatics is a problem number one. Structure of body trauma. Stress birth, seed planted in psyche of child. It develops through critical periods of deprivation in childhood, the sexual frustration. Separates from psyche, has characteristics of attraction, attractor, dominant of Uchtomsky. We are left in background. It's because we all live in tension, all time. We might not feel, but if we connect sensors to our muscles, inner organs, etc., we shall see that we are in a permanent tension, and the tension is hormones of stress. Today's lecture is more material for later consideration. It was my purpose, because one thing is to read a lecture on a subject which is well described. There are textbooks, everybody aware of it. Quite a different thing than you want to cover at least the essence. Consider this is an information for future thoughts. The stress is on you. I hope the most of you, because you will live in the future. Evolution of gas is manifested by mechanism of autonomous activation, which genetically has only the phase of anxiety, becomes the mechanism of both the phase of tension and the phase of asthenia. Gas is dissociated, its unity disintegrated into its constituent parts. Each phase, in response to external or internal stressors, has the opportunity to turn on and off independently, as the phase of anxiety. Is a result of psychodynamics under the influence of stressful life, can be considered as an evolutionary development modernization of gas. Adel 2011. This is what I have told you about. Diseases hand on each axis. Anxiety disorders are on alarm axis. Are you aware how many anxiety disorders were described? 1,000. Is it possible? Not, of course. Basis is the fear of death, and the rest are details: where, when, how, etc. Tension, somatic diseases all over, chronic fatigue syndrome, aesthetic syndrome, syndrome of burnout is very popular now. My work on stress is far from over, and I understand that I cannot see its end, because we are constantly confronted with new ways of treating almost all biological problems. Without exaggerating, we can say that this will last as long as biology and medicine exist. Selye, 1982. My work concerning stress is far from being completed. In Selye, 1982, wrote that it would be continued. The problem of stress as psychogenesis in health and disease issues is transformed into problems. Autonomy of anxiety, anxious, somatic, dissociative disorders. Autonomy of tension, psychosomatic illnesses, tension diseases. Autonomy of asthenia, chronic fatigue syndrome, aesthetic vegetative syndrome, burnout, depression. Adel, 2011. The fifth axiom. It is necessary to recognize that there are two models of disease. First, biological model of disease. Second, stress phase-oriented model of disease. There are two models, biological and stress phases-oriented model. Psychic stressor, psychic trauma, acute reaction to stress, various syndromes, sharp shock reactions. Condition of psychic traumatization, chronic stimulation of endocrine axis and terminal organs, post-stress disorders, disadaptation register, somatic register, neurotic register, psychotic register, individual register. Variations of post-stress disorders. Please remember, psycho-emotional stress is a factor which develops the entire range of health disorders, absolutely entire range, distress registry, somatic, neurotic, psychotic, personal. Aversion to satiety. An example, Stendhal during his visit of Italy felt dizzy, loss of balance. Disorientation. Coming out of St. Peter's Cathedral in the Vatican, he felt nauseated, dizzy. Aversion to satiety. This syndrome is being described now like Stendhal syndrome. The state of balance with vertigo and dullness is genetically welded into one chain with the emotional experience of polar emotion of rapture, disgust. One of these days has fetched such person, the woman, an art kind that is emotional. For the last 20 years she has been deprived of the opportunity to return to Garni-Gerhardt, Armenia. After finding herself in a friendly company amidst natural and temple beauty, she suddenly lost consciousness and fell. This person visits a doctor, neuropathologist. He diagnoses neurasthenia, aesthetic neurotic syndrome, etc. Our attitude changes, our comprehension changes, and from this perspective we can help better than prescribing of different medications. Someone told that Adel Semyonovna doesn't like medications. You know you shouldn't like them. Everything depends on condition. There are conditions when you can't avoid medications at initial stage, and for that a doctor needed who see both psychology and psychopathology and also stressology to distinguish when it is necessary. I hear sometimes hypotonia. What is hypotonia? My blood pressure was 200/100, so what? I knew that it was normal reaction. If I run, I will have the same results. If I came to meet you, it is normal. This is just by the way. Stressology. Science of relationship of physical, somatic and social, soul, body and environment. Stressology. Science standing at the junction of biological sciences, psychology and sociology. Goal of it is study of suffering as a result of the impact of mental stressor, external real and internal thought, on personality and caused after effects. Stressolog is neither a psychotherapist nor psychoanalytic, because stressolog knows the organism, biology and psychology. And sometimes it is necessary to say to the person directly what caused his, for example, neurodermatitis, ulcerative colitis, asthma, of those Chicago 7. American specialists describe 7 main somatic diseases, which they called Chicago 7, which are caused by psychosomatics. Now many are aware of it, but they all have perception that person should have some event, traumatic condition. But no, these tension conditions. And for Armenian women, I call it condition of tolerance, which causes tension. That's why hypotonia indicators are growing. As you understand, this presentation is collected from different sources. I give lectures, trainings, meet people, and every time I'm being asked what to do. Few words about it. Psychic vulnerability. Methods of its reduction. Training course. Doctrines of recovery. The doctrine of Solomon. Health is a wisdom of life. The cause of sickness is violation of balance of human life. Stress, overeating, hypodynamia. The doctrine of Socrates. Man, know thyself. Physical development. The doctrine of Confucius. You want to be healthy? Make yourself healthy. The doctrine emphasizes spiritual strength of human being who by his own will can develop himself. the doctrine of industrial society, learn, create, and change yourself. There are 3 doctrines of recovery. One is Solomon's doctrine. Health is a wisdom of life. About 80% of the causes of all diseases lies in the violation of human life measures. Stresses, overeating, inactivity, bad habits. The second one is doctrine of Socrates. It is based on rationalism. Health is not everything, but without health, everything is nothing. Man, know thyself and maintain physical development. Third one, doctrine of Confucius, I like it most. You want to be healthy? Create health. We'll use spiritual power. And our time is industrial area. All 3 should be combined. Do you know why I show this to you? To ensure you how the psyche is capable of changing biology. But unfortunately, currently we are mainly led. If we can willingly change our body like this, why in case of negative emotions, feelings, can't we use our conscience, believe in ourselves to go out of this situation? If biology is subject to change, what else we are speaking about? Perspectives. This is a completely new one, plasticity of brain. For many years it was told that brain ages and neurocells are dying, and they were not wrong. Find and read this book. Very interesting for any age. But now it's considered that after 70 a person rebirth again. New areas of the brain are included. It is proved that the frontal lobes begin to be sacrificed only after 45-50 years. The brain is born again. It develops and studies the whole life. Thoughts of human being can change everything. I'm coming to you, Aragats, antidepressant without side effects. And this is me. I never went to mountains, never. But this year I went to Aragats, and I forgot about all my small problems with health, pressure fluctuation, cholesterol, knee joint surgery. But there was an internal state of discomfort and a feeling of sticky, creeping depression that tightens me, envelops my tentacles, depriving me of desires, interests, sucking into a viscous swamp and plunging into a viscous swamp of hopelessness. And I went there. A person should always, in any situation, switch himself from negative to the positive. Find yourself. Everyone find his own. I've already told you that I'm an ordinary person and nothing human is foreign to me. And I can be in condition of irritation, aggression. But I know that I need to throw it away. Everyone can throw away in his own way. I do it by vacuum cleaner or floor polisher. Or hit a wall with a ball. As a last resort, you can break a compote jar. I assure you, have a try. Your tension will be removed immediately. I'm not telling you tales. It is not only widely known, I always make experiments. Self-mastering can be used. One of mechanism of psychological defense. System of breathing exercises. Motor switching, discharge by movement. Limited alcohol. By the way, I can recommend you a perfect exercise from yoga, which is called Hormones Yoga. 10-15 minutes every day. Read it. Find in internet. 10-15 minutes stimulates hormonal system and wonderful. It is very important to recharge yourself positively in the morning. Wake up early. Do not look for excess wrinkles on the face. Do not consider a pimple jumped up. Do not make a displeased look on your face. Visualize the face that you enjoyed, regardless of age, and smile to yourself. And if you have any flaws, though you are all young here and you might be quite satisfied with yourself. But in any age, a person can remember himself at 18, 20, 30. Looking in the mirror, imagine if you could believe in power of self-suggestion, which influences biology, prolong your youth, your longevity, and your health. Stress management, system of psychological adaptation. Stress management, constantly changing thinking and behavioral efforts used by a person to cope with external requirements of environment and internal condition. Stress management is a whole science. When cats are scratching on the soul, I open and remember. Here are small endorphins. There are no better endorphins than these. No drugs, no alcohol will not give such rush. Everything depends on you, what you will make your habits. There's no difference for brain to be addicted to the biological drugs, to physical drugs, or to psychical ones. Choose. I have provided you with options. I'm not teaching, not making you. I show you. Choice is yours. You are free to choose, but you should be aware that there are these and that options. How to get rid of negative thoughts. Neuropsychiatrist Dan Siegel claims that within 90 seconds, emotions move up and down like waves on the seashore. You need only 90 seconds to get rid of unpleasant, obsessive, and negative thoughts and anger surrounding them. Give yourself 90 seconds. Take 15 noisily breaths through your nose and exhale noisily through your mouth. This way you will break the vicious cycle and will be free of negative thoughts. And an anchor again, but this is mine. You might have any person, item, landscape, or pleasant situation. Dedicated to my children and all of you. Winning the lottery of life, you not live only for yourself, but also for the many, many brothers and sisters who had a chance to live, but you were born. And despite of all the twists of life, create. This is the only meaning of life. Adel 2002. You can love a young man or an adult. You can love yourself and your pleasures. But better love life as it is, imperfect and wonderful. And as a conclusion, my first book, Stressology, which I wrote in 2002, it was first test book. There is no such book in the world. It was published in England in 2003 by Man Under Stress. I dedicated it to my children and wrote there, Gaining Life Lottery. And each of you sitting here, living, breathing, walking, thinking, feeling, you won an incredible lottery in this life. Incredible. Instead of you could be born hundreds of sisters and brothers, but you won. The chance to live is yours, and you are obliged to live for them and not complain. This is not right, this is not wrong, etc. And in the end, you can love a young man or an adult, you can love yourself and your pleasures, but better love life as it is, imperfect and wonderful.